One night. That's all it took to change everything. For a woman who had planned every detail of her life, the 2 pink lines on that pregnancy test weren't just unexpected, they were catastrophic. Olivia stood there in her elegant bathroom, the marble countertops gleaming under soft lighting, her reflection in the mirror showing a face frozen in disbelief. The pregnancy test trembled in her hand as memories of that night with Alexander flashed through her mind, the charity gala, champagne under crystal chandeliers, their eyes meeting across the room, and later, the passionate encounter neither had planned for. "I don't need your money, and I certainly don't need you." These words would escape her lips weeks later, standing in Alexander's penthouse office, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. But little did she know then how deeply their lives would intertwine, beyond any business arrangement they could draft. Greetings, hopeless romantics and heartfelt dreamers. Welcome back to Dear Love Diaries, your sanctuary for stories that capture love's unpredictable magic. Today's tale will whisk you away into the lives of 2 souls who thought they had their futures perfectly mapped out, until the universe conspired to prove them wonderfully wrong. When carefully constructed plans crumble, sometimes what emerges from the ruins is exactly the love story we never knew we needed. I'm always enchanted to discover where our love story family is tuning in from. Drop your location in the comments below and let's marvel at how these stories of the heart connect us across oceans and continents. Your presence here makes our little corner of the internet feel like home. Today's story is about how sometimes the path to true love isn't the one we plan, but the one that challenges everything we thought we knew about ourselves. It's about Olivia and Alexander, 2 fiercely independent souls who never expected that one night would change everything, and how what began as a pragmatic arrangement slowly blossomed into something neither was prepared for. Chapter 1. Olivia Westbrook was the kind of woman other women admired and men found intimidating. At 35, she'd climbed to senior partner at Williams & Marshall, one of Atlanta's most prestigious law firms, breaking barriers as one of the few black women to achieve such status in the city's corporate legal world. She walked through the office that Monday morning, her tailored charcoal suit perfectly pressed, her naturally curly hair straightened into a sleek bob that meant business. Her colleagues called her the Iron Lady behind her back, not out of malice, but respect. In court, her arguments were razor-sharp, her preparation impeccable. She never lost control, never showed vulnerability. What her colleagues didn't know was that Olivia's strength wasn't just ambition, it was armor. Growing up, she'd watched her mother struggle as a single parent, working 2 jobs to keep them afloat after Olivia's father walked out. "Never depend on anyone but yourself, Livy," her mother used to say. "That way, no one can ever pull the rug out from under you." Olivia had taken those words to heart, building her life brick by careful brick, leaving no room for uncertainty. Her romantic life reflected this philosophy. Short relationships, carefully managed expectations, clear endings. No mess, no drama, no vulnerability. Men came and went in her life like seasonal fashion, appreciated for a time but never essential. Until that charity gala 6 weeks ago. The annual Children's Hospital benefit was the social event of the season, and as the firm's representative, Olivia was expected to make an appearance. The grand ballroom at the St. Regis gleamed with crystal and silver, Atlanta's elite mingling over champagne and philanthropy. "That's Alexander Russo," her colleague whispered, nodding toward a tall figure across the room. "CEO of Horizon Technologies. They say he's worth billions." Olivia followed her gaze, finding herself looking at a striking man in his late 30s. His suit was clearly bespoke, his posture confident without being arrogant. Salt and pepper hair framed a face with warm brown eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled, which he was doing now at something someone had said. He looked genuinely engaged, unusual among the plastic smiles of the charity circuit. "He's also single," her colleague continued with a meaningful look. "Never married. Supposedly married to his work." "Sounds familiar," Olivia replied dryly, sipping her champagne. What she hadn't expected was for those warm brown eyes to find hers across the room minutes later. Or for Alexander Rousseau himself to approach her during the silent auction. "You're not bidding," he observed, coming to stand beside her. "I already made my donation directly to the hospital," Olivia replied. "These auctions are just an excuse for people to show off." Instead of being offended, Alexander laughed, a genuine sound that made something warm unfurl in Olivia's chest. "Refreshingly honest," he said. "I'm Alexander." "I know," she replied. "Olivia Westbrook. The attorney who just won the Carson case." It wasn't a question. That was impressive work. They talked for 2 hours, not about money or status, but about the real issues facing the children's hospital, about their work, about books they'd read. Alexander was nothing like she'd expected. His wealth seemed almost incidental to him. He spoke about his company's sustainable technology initiatives with real passion, about creating systems that could actually help people. When he asked if she wanted to continue their conversation over dinner, Olivia surprised herself by saying yes. Dinner became drinks at his penthouse, discussing the city lights spread below them. The conversation flowed so easily that Olivia barely noticed when it shifted from intellectual to personal, from passionate debate to simply passion. His kiss was unexpected but not unwelcome. His touch confident but questioning. At each step, his eyes asked permission, and at each step, she granted it. For one night, Olivia Westbrook, who planned everything, acted on pure feeling. Morning brought clarity and a quick exit with mutual understanding, a lovely night, but nothing more. They were both married to their careers. Chapter 2. 6 weeks after that night, Olivia sat in her bathroom staring at the pregnancy test in disbelief. This wasn't possible. She was always careful. They had been careful. Yet there it was. Undeniable evidence that life had other plans. For 3 days, Olivia said nothing, did nothing. She went to work, she argued cases, she attended meetings. All while a storm raged inside her. She'd never seriously considered having children, not because she didn't want them, but because the timing never seemed right. Her career always took precedence. On the 4th day, she made an appointment with her doctor, who confirmed what the home test had already told her. Pregnant. 8 weeks along. "Do you have someone to support you through this?" Dr. Rivera asked gently. "I have myself," Olivia replied automatically. "That's all I need." But later that night, as she sat alone in her sleek downtown condo, the question echoed in her mind. Did Alexander have a right to know? Legally, yes. Morally? She wasn't sure. She'd never expected to see him again. Olivia curled up on her sofa, remembering her own childhood. The father who'd left before she could form memories of him. The strain on her mother's face as she worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat. The promises Olivia had made to herself, she would never put herself in that position. Never depend on anyone who could disappear. But was she doing the same thing to her child if she didn't at least tell Alexander? After another sleepless night, she made the call. "Olivia," Alexander's voice sounded surprised but pleased. "I was just thinking about you the other day." "We need to talk," she said, keeping her voice steady. "In person." There was a pause. "Is everything all right?" "I'd rather discuss it face to face." She could almost see him nodding. "Of course. My office? Or would you prefer somewhere more neutral?" "Your office is fine," she said. Less chance of being overheard by someone she knew. The next day, she found herself in the elevator ascending to the top floor of the Gleaming Horizon Technologies headquarters. The receptionist led her straight to Alexander's office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Atlanta's skyline. Alexander rose from behind his desk when she entered, his expression guarded but welcoming. "Olivia. Good to see you." She declined his offer of coffee or water, wanting to get straight to the point. But now that she was here, the words stuck in her throat. "I'm pregnant," she finally said, the words hanging in the air between them. "It's yours." Alexander went very still. For several long moments, he said nothing, his expression unreadable. Then he asked, "Are you certain? Of both facts?" "Yes." He moved to the window, running a hand through his hair as he processed the information. When he turned back to her, his face had undergone a transformation. There was something in his expression she hadn't expected, not shock or dismay, but something that looked almost like hope. "What do you want to do?" he asked quietly. "I'm keeping it," Olivia said firmly, having made that decision days ago. "I'm telling you because you have a right to know, but I don't expect anything from you. I can handle this on my own." Alexander frowned. "Handle this on your own? You mean raise our child alone?" "I'm financially stable. I have a good support system. The child will want for nothing. Except a father," Alexander said, an edge entering his voice. "I want to be involved, Olivia. Fully involved." This was not the response she had anticipated. Men like Alexander Russo, wealthy, committed to their empires, didn't typically jump at the chance to take on unexpected fatherhood. "Why?" she asked bluntly. Alexander's expression softened slightly, becoming distant as if looking at something from long ago. "My father was physically present but emotionally absent my entire childhood. My mother wasn't much better. They stayed in a loveless marriage for appearances and left me to be raised by a rotation of nannies." His eyes refocused on her. "I won't do that to my child." "So what exactly are you proposing?" Olivia asked, crossing her arms. "Co-parenting. Equal responsibility. Equal decisions." Olivia laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "You're suggesting we raise a child together? We barely know each other." "We know the essentials," Alexander countered. "We're both responsible adults. Both successful in our fields. We clearly have some chemistry. And most importantly, we both want what's best for this child." "And how exactly would this work? Shuttle the baby back and forth between your penthouse and my condo?" Alexander shook his head. "We'll figure out the logistics. But I'm not going to be a weekend father, Olivia. I want to be there for every milestone, every fever, every nightmare. I want to be a real parent." Olivia felt a memory surface, sitting by her bedroom window as a child, waiting for a father who never came to pick her up for the weekend. The disappointment that eventually hardened into acceptance. "And what happens when you start dating someone?" she challenged. "When you find the woman you actually want to build a life with?" Something flashed in Alexander's eyes. "I could ask you the same question." They stared at each other, the tension thick between them. Finally, Alexander softened his approach. "Look, all I'm asking is that we try to do this together. For the child's sake. We're both intelligent people. We can draw up an agreement, set boundaries, make it work." Olivia looked at him, really looked at him. There was determination in his face, but also vulnerability. This mattered to him, and not in the way she'd expected. "I need time to think," she said finally. Alexander nodded. "Of course. But don't shut me out, Olivia. Whatever you decide, I want to be part of this child's life." As she left his office, Olivia felt her carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She'd prepared herself for resistance, for negotiation over financial support, perhaps even for complete rejection. Not for this, a man who wanted to be fully present in their child's life. Over the next week, she found herself remembering more details about that night with Alexander. Not just the physical attraction, but the conversations. His intelligence. His surprising humility despite his wealth. The way he spoke about wanting to make a difference with his company. Could they really do this? Create some kind of functional co-parenting arrangement without the foundation of a relationship? Olivia's hand drifted to her still flat stomach. She thought about her own childhood, about all the times she'd wished for a father who cared enough to stay. Finally, she called him again. "I'd like to discuss the details of this co-parenting arrangement," she said when he answered. "Perhaps over dinner?" There was relief in his voice when he responded. "I'll send a car for you at 7. Have you ever tried to keep emotions out of a situation that's inherently emotional? Let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this journey, give this video a thumbs up so others can find it too. Chapter 3. 3 months later, Olivia stood in front of the mirror in her office bathroom, smoothing her blazer over the small but now unmistakable curve of her stomach. At almost 4 months pregnant, she was starting to show, and the whispers around the office had already begun. Not that she cared what anyone thought, she'd earned her position through years of hard work and brilliant legal strategy. A baby wasn't going to change that. At least, that's what she told herself as she headed back to her office to prepare for her afternoon meeting with the firm's biggest client. But as she sat at her desk, the familiar wave of nausea that had been plaguing her all day returned, stronger this time. She barely made it back to the bathroom in time. "You look terrible," her assistant Mia said bluntly when Olivia emerged, pale and shaky. "Should I reschedule with Henderson?" "Absolutely not," Olivia replied, straightening her posture through sheer willpower. "This meeting has been on the books for months. I'm fine." Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "Don't forget, Dr. Rivera, 4 p.m. I'll pick you up at 3:30. Olivia sighed. Alexander had been relentlessly involved since their agreement 3 months ago. He'd insisted on accompanying her to every doctor's appointment, had sent her research articles on pregnancy nutrition, and had even downloaded a pregnancy tracking app that he referenced with alarming frequency. "Your baby is now the size of an avocado," he'd informed her just yesterday over their weekly planning lunch. Their strictly business meals had become a fixture in both their schedules, a time to discuss practical matters related to their impending co-parenthood. She texted back, "Meeting with Henderson. Might run late. I'll meet you there." His response was immediate, "I'll push it to 4:30. Don't skip this appointment, Olivia." She put her phone away, irritated at his presumption yet grudgingly appreciative of his flexibility. Alexander Russo was many things: overbearing, opinionated, frustratingly persistent, but he was also proving to be reliable. He hadn't missed a single appointment or commitment related to the baby. The meeting with Henderson went well despite her nausea, but as she left the conference room, the room spun slightly. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. "Olivia?" Henderson asked with concern. "Are you all right?" "Just a bit lightheaded," she admitted. "Pregnancy joy." Henderson, a father of 3, nodded sympathetically. "My wife had terrible morning sickness with our second. All day, not just mornings. You should take it easy." "I will," she lied smoothly. "Thank you for your concern." But when she reached her office, she found Alexander waiting, his expression a mixture of concern and exasperation. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Your assistant called me. Said you nearly fainted in a meeting." "I did not," Olivia began, but Alexander cut her off. "Enough, Olivia. You're pushing yourself too hard. Dr. Rivera already said you need to reduce your stress levels." He looked at her pale face and the dark circles under her eyes. "When was the last time you ate something?" Olivia had to think about it. "Breakfast? It's past 3. I've been busy." Alexander sighed, then reached into his briefcase and pulled out a container. "Chicken salad. Eat it on the way to the doctor." She wanted to argue on principle, but her stomach growled audibly, betraying her. "Fine." In the car, she grudgingly ate the salad while Alexander reviewed emails on his tablet. The silence between them was no longer as tense as it had been in those first weeks after their agreement, but it wasn't exactly comfortable either. The board meeting went well, Alexander said after a while, not looking up from his tablet. We're going forward with the solar initiative in West Africa. Olivia nodded, remembering their conversation about it during their last lunch. That's good. Sustainable energy where it's needed most. Exactly. That's what I've been trying to tell them for months, Alexander said, a hint of passion entering his voice. It's not just about profit, it's about making a real difference. This was the side of Alexander that continued to surprise her, the genuine conviction behind his business decisions. In an industry where the bottom line typically dictated everything, his commitment to ethical practices and sustainable development was unusual. At the doctor's office, Dr. Rivera confirmed what Alexander had been saying for weeks: Olivia needed to slow down. Her blood pressure was elevated, and she was showing signs of potential complications. I'm recommending reduced work hours, Dr. Rivera said firmly. At least until we get your blood pressure under control. That's not possible, Olivia began, but Alexander interrupted. What would reduced hours look like exactly? He asked Dr. Rivera. Ideally, half days for the next few weeks. More rest, less stress. Olivia shook her head. I have 3 major cases in progress. The Henderson negotiation alone can be delegated, Alexander finished for her. You have associates. Use them. Olivia shot him a venomous look. Stay in your lane, Alexander. My career is not your concern. Our child's health is, he countered quietly. Before she could respond, Dr. Rivera intervened. Would you like to know the sex of the baby? The question caught them both off guard. They looked at each other, momentarily united in surprise. You can tell already? Alexander asked. The position is perfect today, Dr. Rivera replied with a smile, moving the ultrasound wand over Olivia's stomach. If you want to know. Olivia hesitated. Finding out made it more real somehow. More personal. Less of a theoretical concept and more of a specific person they were creating. Do you want to know? She asked Alexander, surprised to find herself seeking his input. He studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Only if you do. The simple deference to her preference touched something in Olivia. She turned to Dr. Rivera and nodded. It's a girl, the doctor said, pointing to the screen. A daughter. Olivia felt unexpected tears spring to her eyes. Next to her, Alexander's breathing changed, becoming slightly uneven. A girl, he repeated softly, his eyes fixed on the monitor where the blurry image of their daughter floated in grayscale. The moment hung between them, fragile and profound. For the first time since learning of the pregnancy, Olivia felt something shift, a connection not just to the child she was carrying but to the man beside her who would be her daughter's father. Later, in the car, Alexander broke the silence that had fallen between them. Move in with me, he said abruptly. Olivia turned to stare at him. Excuse me? Temporarily, he clarified. Just until the baby's born and through the first few months. It makes practical sense. In what universe? Olivia asked incredulously. In the one where you need to reduce your stress and work hours, where you're going to need help as your pregnancy progresses, and where it would be beneficial for us to figure out how to co-parent before we have a screaming newborn between us. He looked at her seriously. My penthouse has 6 bedrooms, Olivia. You would have your own space, complete privacy. But I would be there if you needed anything. That's what friends are for, Olivia countered. I have Talia. Talia has a full-time job and lives on the other side of town. I work from home 3 days a week. And frankly, I want to be involved in these last months of pregnancy too. Olivia looked out the window, watching the Atlanta skyline pass by. The idea was absurd. Living with Alexander would be an exercise in frustration. He was too controlling, too opinionated, too present. But she thought about her own apartment, the stairs she had to climb when the elevator broke down, the distance from her doctor's office and the hospital. She thought about the nights she'd woken up with heartburn or nausea with no one to talk to. "I'd have my own wing," she said finally, not quite believing she was considering this. "Completely separate," Alexander agreed quickly. "Your own bathroom, sitting room, even a small office if you need it. We'd only share the kitchen and main living areas. And I'd be free to come and go as I please." "Of course. It's not a prison, Olivia. And this is temporary. Just until the baby's born and we figure out a long-term arrangement." Alexander nodded, trying to contain the triumph she could see creeping into his expression. "I'll think about it," she said, but they both knew she'd already made up her mind. 2 weeks later, Olivia found herself directing movers as they carried her essential belongings into Alexander's penthouse. She'd decided to sublet her condo rather than give it up completely, her pragmatic way of ensuring she maintained her independence. "The blue chair goes in the bedroom," she instructed one of the movers, pointing down the hallway. "Actually," Alexander interjected, appearing at her side, "I thought you might want it in the sitting room of your suite. The light is better there for reading." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "How do you know I read in that chair?" "You mentioned it once," he replied with a small shrug. "That it was your grandfather's chair and you liked to read in it on Sunday mornings." She had mentioned it, she realized. During one of their lunches when they'd been discussing their childhoods. It had been a passing comment, but he'd remembered. The sitting room would be nice, she conceded. As the movers finished up, Olivia surveyed her new temporary home. Alexander had been true to his word, her suite was spacious and private, with its own entrance from the main hallway. He'd even had the walls repainted in a soft cream color that complemented her furniture, rather than the stark white that dominated the rest of the penthouse. That evening, as they sat at opposite ends of the massive dining table, picking at a dinner the housekeeper had prepared, the awkwardness of their situation settled over them. "This is strange," Olivia finally said, breaking the silence. Alexander looked up from his plate. "Yes," he agreed simply. "I'm not used to sharing space." "Neither am I," he admitted. "But we should get used to it. Once the baby comes, we'll be sharing a lot more than space." Olivia nodded slowly, the reality of their situation hitting her anew. In just a few months, they would be permanently connected through their daughter. This arrangement, this careful dance of boundaries and compromises, would be their life for the next 18 years at least. "I have a conference call with Tokyo at 9, Alexander said, standing and taking his plate to the kitchen. "Please make yourself at home. The housekeeper stocked the kitchen with everything on that list you gave her." Olivia watched him go, feeling strangely adrift in the huge, pristine penthouse. This wasn't how she'd imagined her life would be at 35. Living with a man she barely knew, carrying his child, trying to build some kind of functional partnership out of an accidental pregnancy. Yet as she placed her hand on her growing belly and felt the first fluttering movements of her daughter, she couldn't bring herself to regret the path that had led her here. Different, yes. Complicated, certainly. But not wrong. Over the next few weeks, they established a rhythm of sorts. Alexander was gone much of the day, and Olivia worked from her makeshift office, taking video calls and reviewing documents sent by her associates. They shared dinner most evenings, their conversations gradually becoming less stilted as they found common ground beyond the baby. One night, as Olivia was making her way to the kitchen for her now nightly bowl of ice cream, she heard Alexander's voice coming from his office, the door slightly ajar. "No, reschedule the Singapore meeting," he was saying firmly. "Dr. Rivera said the amniocentesis results should come back that day, and I need to be there." Olivia paused, surprised. She hadn't even told him about the amnio appointment yet, she'd only scheduled it that morning. "I don't care if Wong has already booked his flight," Alexander continued. "This is non-negotiable. Family comes first. Family. The word hung in the air, both foreign and somehow right. They were becoming a family, weren't they? Not in the traditional sense, but a family nonetheless. Later that night, unable to sleep, Olivia walked out to the expansive terrace that overlooked the city. The lights of Atlanta twinkled below, a carpet of stars mirroring those above. She was surprised to find Alexander already there, nursing what looked like a whiskey. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, not turning around. "She's doing somersaults tonight," Olivia replied, coming to stand beside him at the railing. Alexander glanced at her belly. "May I?" It was a request he'd never made before. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. He placed his large hand gently on the curve of her stomach, waiting patiently. After a moment, the baby kicked, and his face transformed with wonder. "That's amazing," he whispered. "Feels a bit like an alien invasion from the inside," Olivia joked, but the moment felt sacred somehow. They stood there together, Alexander's hand still resting lightly on her belly, both focused on the tiny life growing within her. For the first time since this whole journey began, Olivia felt truly at peace with her decision to include Alexander in their daughter's life. Maybe, just maybe, they could make this work after all. Chapter 4. At 6 months pregnant, Olivia discovered the limitations of pride. She had been reviewing documents for the Henderson case when a sharp pain lanced through her lower back, stealing her breath. She tried to stand, to walk it off, but another spasm hit, sending her gasping back into her chair. "Alexander," she called, hating the weakness in her voice but unable to move. He appeared in her doorway almost instantly, as if he'd been nearby all along. One look at her face and he was across the room, kneeling beside her chair. "What's wrong? Is it the baby?" "My back," she managed through gritted teeth. "Muscle spasm, I think." Alexander's worried expression relaxed slightly, but his eyes remained concerned. "Can you walk to the bedroom? You'll be more comfortable there." She attempted to stand again but winced as another spasm hit. Without hesitation, Alexander gently lifted her into his arms. "This isn't necessary," she protested weakly, even as she instinctively looped her arms around his neck. "Consider it practice for carrying you over the threshold," he joked, then immediately looked mortified at his own words. "I mean." "I know what you meant," Olivia said with a small smile, deciding to spare him. "Just don't drop me." In her bedroom, he carefully laid her on the bed, propping pillows behind her back. "I'll get you some water and call Dr. Rivera." "It's just a muscle spasm," Olivia insisted. "It's happened before." Alexander paused at the door. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's not a big deal. It is if you're in pain." He returned minutes later with water, a heating pad, and his iPad. "Dr. Rivera says it's normal but to call if it gets worse or is accompanied by any cramping." She also suggested a warm bath and this stretching routine. He showed her the screen where he'd already pulled up pregnancy-safe stretches for back pain. "You didn't have to cancel your meetings," Olivia said, noticing the time. "I didn't have any important ones." Alexander sat carefully on the edge of her bed. "Can I help you with the stretches?" There was something so earnest in his offer that Olivia found herself nodding despite her usual insistence on handling things alone. Together, they worked through the gentle exercises, Alexander's hands steady and supportive as he helped her stretch her tight muscles. "Where did you learn to do this?" she asked as his thumbs pressed into a particularly tense area of her lower back, providing instant relief. "I dated a physical therapist for a while," he admitted. "Picked up a few things." "Lucky me," Olivia murmured, then tensed as she realized how that might sound. But Alexander just chuckled softly. "I do have some useful skills beyond making money and aggravating you." When the pain had subsided enough for her to lie comfortably, Alexander started to leave, but Olivia found herself calling him back. "Tell me about your parents," she said, surprising both of them. It was a subject they'd both skirted around during their discussions of childcare philosophies. Alexander hesitated, then returned to sit in the armchair near her bed. "What do you want to know? Whatever made you so determined to be different as a father?" He was quiet for a long moment, his expression distant. "My father was successful. Driven. His company was everything to him. I think I can count on one hand the number of school events he attended." He looked down at his own hands, strong and capable like his father's had been. He wasn't cruel. Just absent. Even when he was physically there, he was somewhere else mentally. "And your mother?" "Beautiful. Charming at parties. Empty inside." His voice held no bitterness, just a matter-of-fact sadness. "She married my father for his money and position. He married her because she looked good on his arm. They had me because that's what was expected." "Alexander," Olivia said softly, her heart aching for the lonely boy he must have been. "The irony is, they gave me everything except what I actually needed." He met her eyes, his own vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "That's why this is so important to me, Olivia. I don't want our daughter growing up feeling like an afterthought." In that moment, something shifted between them, a deeper understanding, a shared purpose beyond the practical arrangements they'd been focusing on. "She won't," Olivia promised. "She'll have both of us." The intimacy of the moment seemed to make Alexander uncomfortable. He stood, retreating toward the door. "You should rest. I'll be in my office if you need anything." But that conversation marked a turning point. In the days that followed, they began to share more of themselves with each other. During their evening meals, Alexander told stories about his boarding school days and his early struggles to prove himself as more than just his father's son. Olivia opened up about the difficulties of being one of the only black women in her law school class, about her mother's sacrifices to put her through college. One evening, Alexander came home to find Olivia in the kitchen, attempting to make her grandmother's jambalaya despite her awkward movements with her growing belly. "What are you doing?" Alexander asked, setting down his briefcase and hurrying to her side. "Making my grandmother's jambalaya," Olivia explained, wincing as she reached for the cayenne pepper. "I had a craving. You could have asked me to pick something up." He gently took the wooden spoon from her hand. "Or at least waited until I got home to help." "I'm pregnant, not helpless," she countered, though there was no real bite to her words. "Besides, cooking helps me think." Alexander studied the array of ingredients on the counter. "Is this from a recipe, or memory?" "Memory. My grandmother never wrote anything down." She watched as he awkwardly held the spoon. "Have you ever made jambalaya before?" "I've never made anything more complicated than scrambled eggs," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "My culinary expertise ends at ordering takeout." Olivia couldn't help but laugh. The great Alexander Russo, defeated by a pot of rice and sausage? "I never claimed to be perfect." His eyes twinkled as he handed back the spoon. "Teach me." What was meant to be a simple dinner became an impromptu cooking lesson, with Olivia directing and Alexander following her instructions with the same concentration he likely gave to multi-million-dollar business deals. When he accidentally added too much cayenne and started coughing from the spice cloud, Olivia laughed so hard she had to sit down. "You're enjoying my suffering," he accused, eyes watering. "Just a little," she admitted. "It's nice to see you out of your element for once." The jambalaya turned out surprisingly well despite his inexperience, and as they sat at the dining table, Olivia found herself sharing stories of holidays at her grandmother's house, of the women in her family gathering in the kitchen, of the lessons about life and love that were passed down along with recipes. "Food was never just food in our family," she explained, watching Alexander savor another bite. "It was how we showed love. My family showed love through trust funds and networking opportunities," he replied dryly. "No wonder I can't cook." "It's never too late to learn," Olivia said, surprised by her own words. Was she really suggesting he'd be around long enough for that? Later that night, unable to sleep, Olivia found Alexander in the living room, working on his laptop. She hesitated in the doorway, watching him for a moment. His features were softened in the dim light, less CEO and more just. Alexander. Can't sleep, he asked without looking up, somehow aware of her presence. Your daughter is practicing her kickboxing routine, Olivia said, settling onto the couch beside him. What's your excuse? Quarterly reports. He closed his laptop. Everything okay? Just restless. She stretched her legs out, wincing slightly at the ache in her lower back. Without asking, Alexander gently pulled her feet into his lap and began massaging them. The gesture was so natural, so intimate, that Olivia found herself momentarily speechless. Better? He asked after a few minutes. Much, she admitted. Where did you learn that? YouTube, he confessed with a slight smile. I may have been researching pregnancy symptoms. The thought of powerful CEO Alexander Russo watching pregnancy massage tutorials online made something warm bloom in Olivia's chest. You're full of surprises. Good ones, I hope. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them seemed charged with possibility. Alexander's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, a silent question that made Olivia's heart race. But before either could act, the baby kicked sharply, making Olivia gasp. She's really active tonight, she said, breaking the moment. Alexander hesitated, then asked, Can I feel? Without thinking, Olivia took his hand and placed it on her rounded belly. The baby kicked again, as if on cue, and Alexander's expression transformed with wonder. Hello, little one, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. That's quite a kick you've got there. When he finally looked up at Olivia, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For letting me be part of this. His hand remained on her belly, warm and steady. For not shutting me out, even though you could have. The next morning, Olivia called Talia during her lunch break, needing her friend's perspective. I think I'm developing feelings for him, she admitted once they dispensed with the usual pleasantries. You think? Talia's voice was heavy with sarcasm. Liv, you've been living with the man for months. You're having his baby. It would be weirder if you didn't have feelings. It's complicated. It always is with you. Talia's tone softened. What are you afraid of, exactly? Olivia considered the question. That I'm just hormonal. That he's only interested because of the baby. That we're too different to make it work long term. Has he given you any reason to think he's not genuinely interested in you? No, Olivia admitted. If anything, he's been incredibly thoughtful and respectful. But Talia, he's used to women falling at his feet. What happens when the novelty wears off? Maybe you should give him more credit, Talia suggested. And yourself, too. You're not exactly easy to walk away from, Liv. Across town, Alexander was having a similar conversation with Dominic over lunch. I don't know what to do, Alexander confessed after explaining the growing tension between himself and Olivia. I can't stop thinking about her. So tell her, Dominic said, as if it were that simple. It's not that easy. She's made it clear from the beginning that she values her independence. The last thing I want is for her to think I'm making a move just because of the baby. Are you? Dominic asked bluntly. No, Alexander replied without hesitation. The baby is what brought us together, but that's not why I. He trailed off, unable to articulate the depth of what he was feeling. Why you're falling in love with her? Dominic supplied. Alexander didn't deny it. She's extraordinary, Dom, brilliant, principled, stronger than anyone I've ever met. And she doesn't give a damn about my money or my company. Do you know how rare that is? So what's holding you back? I'm terrified of messing this up, Alexander admitted. If it doesn't work out, it's not just us who get hurt. Dominic leaned forward. Look, I've known you for 15 years. I've seen you build a company from the ground up, take risks no one else would touch. But I've never seen you like this about a woman. Maybe instead of calculating all the ways it could go wrong, you should consider what you might be missing if you don't try. That evening, when Alexander returned home, something had shifted in the air between them. Olivia sensed it as soon as he walked through the door, a new tension that was both exciting and terrifying. They moved through their evening routine with hyper-awareness of each other's presence. When their hands brushed as they prepared dinner together, neither pulled away immediately. When they sat on the couch watching a documentary, they sat closer than usual, their shoulders almost touching. It was Olivia who finally broke the tension. "This is ridiculous," she said, turning to face him. "We're acting like teenagers. Is that a bad thing?" Alexander asked, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't know what we're doing," she admitted. "Neither do I," he confessed. "But I know what I want to do." "What's that?" Instead of answering, Alexander leaned forward, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Olivia met him halfway, their lips meeting in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deepening as months of suppressed attraction finally found expression. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he murmured. "Why didn't you?" Olivia asked, her hands still resting on his shoulders. "I wasn't sure you wanted me to." His thumb brushed along her cheekbone. "I didn't want to complicate things if you weren't interested." "Consider me interested," she said with a small smile, before pulling him in for another kiss. Chapter 5. The next morning, Olivia woke to find Alexander had already left for an early meeting, but he'd left coffee brewing and a note on the counter. "Dinner tonight? A proper date this time." The simple gesture made her smile. Perhaps they could navigate this new aspect of their relationship after all. But her optimism was short-lived. By midday, a persistent ache had developed in her lower abdomen, different from the usual discomforts of pregnancy. "It's probably nothing," she told herself, trying to focus on her work. But by 2 o'clock, the pain had intensified enough that she called Dr. Rivera. "I want you to come in right away," the doctor said after hearing her symptoms. "It might be nothing, but with your history of high blood pressure, I'd rather not take chances." Olivia hesitated only briefly before calling Alexander. "I need to go to Dr. Rivera's office," she said when he answered. "She thinks it's probably nothing, but—" "I'm on my way," he interrupted, his voice tight with concern. "Don't move until I get there." Despite her usual insistence on handling things herself, Olivia found herself grateful for his steady presence as they sat in Dr. Rivera's office an hour later, waiting for test results. "Your blood pressure is higher than I'd like," Dr. Rivera said when she returned. "And there are some signs of early preeclampsia. I'm putting you on strict bed rest for at least 2 weeks." "Bed rest?" Olivia repeated, stunned. "But I have the Henderson deposition next week, and the Phillips brief due." "Not anymore," Alexander said firmly. "Your health and the baby's health come first." Dr. Rivera nodded. "I'm serious about this, Olivia. Preeclampsia can develop rapidly and become dangerous for both you and your baby. Bed rest, limited stress, and frequent monitoring are our best tools right now." The drive home was quiet, Olivia trying to process what this meant for her carefully structured life and career. In the elevator up to the penthouse, she finally voiced her fears. "What if I can't handle this?" she asked softly. "I've never been good at sitting still." Alexander's hand found hers, warm and reassuring. "You won't have to do it alone." True to his word, Alexander rearranged his entire schedule over the next few days. He moved meetings to video calls he could take from home, delegated responsibilities to Dominic, and set up a comfortable space in the living room so Olivia wouldn't be confined to her bedroom all day. "You can't put your entire life on hold for this," Olivia protested on the third day, watching him cancel yet another business trip. "I'm not putting my life on hold," he corrected her. "I'm prioritizing what matters most." The simplicity of his statement stunned her into silence. All her life, Olivia had been determined to be self-sufficient, to never depend on anyone the way her mother had depended on men who ultimately let her down. Yet here was Alexander, rearranging his world to support her, asking nothing in return. Their new routine developed naturally. Alexander would work from home in the mornings, then join Olivia for lunch. They'd watch a movie or play board games in the afternoon, then he'd handle any urgent business while she napped. Evenings were spent together, talking about everything and nothing, their conversations growing deeper as the days passed. It was during one of these evenings, a week into her bed rest, that Alexander's phone rang with news of a crisis at Horizon Technologies. A server breach had compromised sensitive data, and the company's stock was already dropping in after-hours trading. "Go," Olivia said immediately, seeing the conflict in his eyes. "They need you there." "I'll send Dominic." "Alexander," she said firmly. "This is exactly the kind of situation where you need to be present as CEO. I'll be fine for a few hours." Still he hesitated. "You'll call if anything changes? Promise me." "I promise. Now go save your company." After he left, the penthouse felt strangely empty. Olivia tried to distract herself with a book, but found herself checking her phone repeatedly for updates. Finally, around midnight, exhaustion won out, and she drifted off to sleep on the living room couch. She woke briefly when Alexander returned in the early hours of the morning. He looked exhausted but relieved as he gently lifted her from the couch. "Crisis averted," she murmured sleepily. "Crisis averted," he confirmed, carrying her to her bedroom. "Go back to sleep." But as he turned to leave, Olivia caught his hand. "Stay," she said softly. "Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight." Alexander hesitated only briefly before slipping off his shoes and jacket and settling onto the bed beside her. They lay together in the darkness, not touching but acutely aware of each other's presence. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for understanding about tonight." "We're partners in this," Olivia replied, surprising herself with how right the words felt. "That means supporting each other, not just the baby." The next morning, Olivia woke early, aware of voices coming from the nursery next door. Curious, she made her way carefully to the doorway, where she found Alexander sitting on the floor surrounded by unassembled furniture, talking quietly. "Your mom's going to love this room when it's finished," he was saying. "She has amazing taste. Much better than mine. You should see my office, all chrome and leather, no personality at all. But your mom, she knows how to make a space feel like home." Olivia stood frozen, listening as Alexander continued his conversation with their unborn daughter. "I hope you get her brains and her determination. And her smile. Definitely her smile. But maybe not her stubbornness." He chuckled softly. "Actually, you'll need some of that too, in this world. Just promise you'll be a little easier on your old dad when you're a teenager, okay?" Something shifted in Olivia's chest as she listened to the tenderness in Alexander's voice. This wasn't just about obligation or doing the right thing for him anymore. This was love, pure and simple, for their daughter, and maybe, just maybe, for her too. Relationships often develop when we least expect them to. Have you ever found yourself falling for someone you initially tried to keep at a distance? Drop a heart emoji in the comments if you have. And if you're new here, now's the perfect time to join our Dear Love Diaries family by subscribing. Chapter 6. 2 weeks later, Olivia was cleared to resume light activities, though she was still working remotely. To her surprise, she found she didn't mind the slower pace as much as she'd expected. It had given her time to reflect on what she truly wanted, not just for her career, but for her life. "We should celebrate your return to semi-freedom," Alexander suggested over breakfast. "Dinner out tonight?" "Actually, I got a text from Talia," Olivia replied. "She and Dominic have been plotting something together. They want us at your place at 3. Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Dominic and Talia planning something together? Should we be worried?" "Probably," Olivia laughed. They arrived at Alexander's penthouse, which Olivia still thought of as their place despite having moved back to her apartment temporarily, to find it transformed. Elegant decorations in soft yellows and greens adorned the living room, and a banner reading "Baby Russo Westbrook" hung above a table laden with gifts. "Surprise!" Talia exclaimed, rushing forward to hug Olivia. "Don't be mad, we know you said no baby shower, but every baby deserves to be celebrated." Before Olivia could respond, Dominic appeared with a glass of something that looked like champagne but was undoubtedly non-alcoholic. "Alexander, help me with the food?" As the men disappeared into the kitchen, Talia leaned in. "So? How are things really going between you two?" "Complicated," Olivia admitted. "Good complicated, I think. We've been closer. But neither of us has put a label on it." "Labels are overrated," Talia said with a wave of her hand. "But happiness isn't. You look happy, Liv." The afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, games, and gift opening. Olivia was touched by the thoughtfulness of their friends, and even more touched by Alexander's obvious joy as he helped her unwrap tiny clothes and practical baby items. "There's one more," he said when the pile of gifts seemed exhausted. He handed her a small, elegantly wrapped box. Inside was a delicate silver locket. When Olivia opened it, she found a tiny slip of paper inside with the words, "For memories to come," written in Alexander's precise handwriting. "It's beautiful," she whispered, genuinely moved. "Look at the back," he urged gently. Olivia turned the locket over to find an engraving, "For the women who changed everything." Tears sprang to her eyes as she realized he meant both her and their daughter. "Thank you," she said, meeting his gaze. The tenderness she found there made her breath catch. Later, after their friends had gone and they were cleaning up together, the comfortable silence between them felt charged with unspoken words. "I've been thinking," Alexander began, carefully placing a crystal serving dish back in its cabinet. "These past few weeks." "Me too," Olivia admitted, leaning against the counter. "It's been, not what I expected." "In a good way?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Instead of answering with words, Olivia closed the distance between them, rising on tiptoes to press her lips to his. Alexander responded immediately, his arms encircling her as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that all day," he murmured. "Why didn't you?" "I wasn't sure where we stand," he admitted. "After everything." "I'm not sure either," Olivia confessed. "But I know I want to find out." They spent the night together for the first time since that initial encounter that had changed everything. This time was different, slower, more intentional, both of them acutely aware of the connection that had grown between them over the months. In the morning, however, Olivia woke with a familiar sense of panic. What was she doing? She had spent years building walls around her heart, determined never to be vulnerable the way her mother had been. And now here she was, potentially setting herself up for the same heartbreak. Alexander sensed her withdrawal even before she spoke. "You're overthinking this," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "How do you know what I'm thinking?" she challenged. "Because I know you," he replied simply. "You're wondering if this is a mistake, if you're setting yourself up to get hurt." His accuracy only increased her anxiety. "Can you blame me? This is exactly what I didn't want, my life completely intertwined with someone else's, dependent on their choices." Alexander sat up, fully awake now. Is that what you think this is? Dependence? Isn't it? Olivia countered. Look at us, Alexander. In less than a year, we've gone from strangers to co-parents to, whatever this is. How do we know this isn't just circumstance pushing us together? It was circumstance that brought us together, he acknowledged. But it's choice that keeps us here. My choice. Your choice. And what happens when you choose differently? The question came out before she could stop it, revealing her deepest fear. Alexander's expression softened with understanding. You think I'm going to walk away? Everyone does eventually, she said quietly. I'm not everyone, Olivia. His voice was gentle but firm. And I'm not going anywhere. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Olivia couldn't shake it. Later that day, she told Alexander she needed some time to think and return to her apartment. That evening, she called her mother, something she rarely did when facing a personal dilemma. I'm scared, Mom, she admitted after explaining the situation. What if I'm making a huge mistake? Oh, baby, Eleanor said with a sigh. Love is always a risk. The question isn't whether you might get hurt, you might. The question is whether he's worth the risk. How do I know? Does he make you feel like you're more yourself when you're with him, or less? Olivia considered the question. More, she realized. He challenges me, but he also accepts me exactly as I am. That's rare, Eleanor said. Rarer than you might think. But what if it doesn't work out? I've seen what happens when relationships fail, Mom. I watched you struggle after Dad left. And you think I regret it? Eleanor asked, surprising her. Loving your father gave me you, Olivia. Even with all the pain that came after, I'd make the same choice again in a heartbeat. After they hung up, Olivia stood at her window, looking out at the city lights, her mother's words echoing in her mind. Was Alexander worth the risk? Alexander, meanwhile, was seeking his own counsel. I think I've messed everything up, he told Dominic over drinks at his penthouse. She's pulling away again. Did you tell her how you feel? Dominic asked. I tried, Alexander said with frustration. But every time I get close, she puts up another wall. So knock it down, Dominic advised. You're Alexander Russo. When have you ever backed down from a challenge? This isn't a business negotiation, Dom. I can't just force her to trust me. No, but you can show her why she should. The next day, Alexander appeared at Olivia's apartment with a set of keys. I have something to show you, he said. Will you come with me? Curiosity overcame her reluctance, and Olivia found herself following him to a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood not far from her office. What is this? She asked as he unlocked the front door. See for yourself, he said, stepping aside to let her enter. The interior was freshly renovated, with warm hardwood floors and large windows that flooded the space with natural light. But it was the details that caught Olivia's attention, the kitchen with its open layout reminiscent of her grandmother's house, the built-in bookshelves that could hold her law books, the nursery painted in the exact shade of yellow she'd mentioned loving once in passing. Alexander, she breathed, stunned. What is this? It's not what you think, he said quickly. I'm not asking you to move in with me. This isn't mine, it's yours, if you want it. Close to your office, good school district, backyard for when she's older. You bought me a house? Olivia asked, incredulous. I bought an investment property, he corrected. That happens to be perfect for you and our daughter. No strings attached, Olivia. You can live here without me if that's what you want. I'll still be involved with our daughter, but on your terms. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she understood what he was offering, not just a home, but a choice. Freedom, not dependence. Why would you do this? She asked. Alexander's expression was unguarded, vulnerable in a way she rarely saw. Because I love you, he said simply. And loving someone means wanting their happiness, even if it doesn't include you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Olivia stood frozen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering, and what he was risking. Say something, he finally urged. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Of depending on you. Of losing myself in this. Of getting hurt. Alexander stepped closer, taking her hands in his. I can't promise we'll never hurt each other, Olivia. But I can promise that I will never intentionally break your trust. And I will never ask you to be less than who you are. What if it doesn't work, she whispered. What if it does, he countered. Isn't that possibility worth the risk? In that moment, looking into his eyes, Olivia made her decision. She'd spent so long protecting herself from pain that she'd nearly missed the chance at something extraordinary. I love you too, she said, the words both terrifying and liberating. And yes, it's worth the risk. Life's greatest love stories rarely follow the path we expect. I'd love to hear about a time when love surprised you in the comments below. Chapter 7. The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment and growth for both of them. They decided to split their time between Alexander's penthouse and Olivia's new brownstone, creating a rhythm that honored both their need for togetherness and Olivia's need for independence. I was thinking, Alexander said one evening as they relaxed on the couch, his hand absently stroking her hair. We've done this all backwards, haven't we? Baby first, then living together, then falling in love. Would you change it? Olivia asked. Not a single moment, he replied without hesitation. But I was wondering if you might want to try something conventional for once. Like what? Like a date, he suggested. A proper one, where I pick you up and bring flowers and take you somewhere nice. Olivia laughed. We're having a baby together in less than 2 months, and you want to take me on a first date? Better late than never, he said with a grin. Tomorrow night? 7 o'clock? True to his word, Alexander arrived at her brownstone the next evening in a tailored suit, a bouquet of peonies in hand. He took her to a small, exclusive restaurant where they were seated in a private alcove, away from curious eyes. Is this strange? Olivia asked as they settled into their chairs. Going on a first date when we already know so much about each other? I still find new things to learn about you every day, Alexander replied. Like how you hum when you're concentrating. Or how you always touch your necklace when you're thinking about our daughter. Olivia's hand flew to the locket he'd given her, proving his point. I didn't realize I did that. There's a lot we're still discovering, he said. That's part of the journey, isn't it? As they shared a dessert later, Alexander broached a subject they'd been dancing around. Have you thought about what you want to do after the baby comes? About work, I mean. Olivia appreciated that he asked rather than assumed. I want to go back, but maybe not right away. And maybe not at the same pace as before. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, he assured her. We'll figure out childcare together. The simplicity of his support, without judgment or expectation, meant more to Olivia than grand gestures ever could. Here was a man who truly saw her as an equal partner, who valued her career as much as his own. In the following weeks, they settled into a new routine, learning the rhythms of each other's lives. Alexander included Olivia in key business decisions, valuing her legal expertise and sharp mind. Olivia invited Alexander to an important court appearance, allowing him to witness her in her professional element. You were incredible in there, he told her afterward, genuine admiration in his eyes. The way you handled that cross-examination was brilliant. It felt good, she admitted. Being back in the courtroom, even briefly. You're going to be an amazing mother, Olivia, he said, understanding her unspoken concern. And an amazing attorney. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. As they walked hand in hand back to the car, Olivia reflected on how far they'd come from that first confrontational meeting in his office, when she'd announced her pregnancy with defiance, expecting the worst. Now, they were building a life together, not out of obligation, but out of genuine love and respect. "Alexander," she said suddenly, stopping on the sidewalk. "Ask me again." "Ask you what?" he replied, confused. "About the brownstone." "Ask me again." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Olivia Westbrook, will you accept this home, not as a gift from me, but as the beginning of our life together?" "Yes," she said simply. "Our life together." Chapter 8. At 37 weeks pregnant, Olivia woke in the middle of the night to a sharp pain that made her gasp. She lay still, waiting to see if it would pass, but another followed minutes later. "Alexander," she whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. "I think it's time." He was instantly alert, years of responding to business emergencies translating seamlessly to this more personal crisis. With calm efficiency, he helped her dress, gathered their hospital bag, and called Dr. Rivera, all while keeping a reassuring hand on Olivia's lower back. "Everything's going to be fine," he assured her as they drove through the quiet pre-dawn streets. "You're doing great." In the hospital, however, complications quickly arose. Olivia's blood pressure spiked dangerously, and the baby's heart rate showed signs of distress. "We need to do an emergency C-section," Dr. Rivera informed them, her expression serious. "The baby's in distress, and with your preeclampsia, we can't risk waiting." Fear gripped Olivia's heart. This wasn't how she had imagined it. A calm, controlled delivery with time to prepare mentally. She looked to Alexander, expecting to see his own panic mirrored back at her, but his expression was steady, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'll be right there with you," he promised, squeezing her hand. "Every second." In the operating room, as they prepared Olivia for surgery, Alexander maintained a calm presence by her side. He spoke softly to her about the future, about bringing their daughter home, about the life they would build together, a steady stream of reassurance that anchored her through the fear. When the cry of their newborn daughter finally filled the room, Olivia felt a surge of emotion so powerful it took her breath away. Alexander's eyes filled with tears as the nurse placed the tiny, wriggling bundle in his arms. "She's perfect," he whispered, bringing their daughter close for Olivia to see. "Absolutely perfect." They named her Eleanor Sophia Russo Westbrook. Eleanor after Olivia's mother, and Sophia after Dr. Rivera, who had guided them through a difficult pregnancy. The first few weeks were a blur of exhaustion, joy, and adjustment. Alexander took time away from Horizon Technologies, delegating more responsibility to Dominic so he could be fully present during this crucial time. Olivia, still recovering from surgery, was grateful for his support as she navigated the physical challenges of healing while caring for a newborn. Eleanor's arrival had transformed their relationship once again. There was a new depth to their connection, a shared purpose that went beyond romance or co-parenting arrangements. They were a family now, bound by love for each other and for the tiny girl who had changed everything. "I never thought I could love someone this much," Olivia admitted one night as they stood together watching Eleanor sleep. "It terrifies me sometimes." "What does?" Alexander asked, his arm around her waist. "How much I have to lose now," she said softly. "How much it would hurt if anything happened to either of you." Alexander turned her gently to face him. "That's the price of love, isn't it? The risk of loss. But imagine how much poorer we'd be if we'd let fear win." Eleanor's 6-week checkup coincided with Olivia's own postpartum appointment. As they prepared to leave for the doctor's office, they faced their first major parenting disagreement. "She shouldn't be out in this weather," Alexander insisted, looking at the light rain falling outside. "It's too cold and wet. We should reschedule." "It's just a little rain, Alexander," Olivia countered. "She'll be bundled up and we'll go straight from the car to the building. Rescheduling means waiting another 2 weeks." "It's not worth the risk," he maintained, his jaw set in the stubborn expression she'd come to recognize. "You can't protect her from every raindrop for the rest of her life," Olivia argued. "We can't raise her in a bubble." The tension between them escalated, both believing they were advocating for their daughter's best interests. Finally, Olivia stepped back, taking a deep breath. "This isn't about the rain, is it?" she asked more gently. Alexander's expression softened. "My mother got sick when I was 8, he admitted. Pneumonia that started as a simple cold. I remember my father dismissing her first symptoms, saying she was overreacting. He looked down at Eleanor, sleeping peacefully in her carrier. I just want to be careful." Understanding dawned. "You should have told me," Olivia said. "We'll reschedule the non-urgent parts and just do the essential checkup today. And we'll take every precaution with the weather." It was their first lesson in navigating parenthood together, learning to communicate, to understand the fears and experiences that shaped their approaches, to find compromise. As the weeks passed, they settled into a new rhythm. Alexander returned to work but maintained flexible hours, often bringing Eleanor to the office for a few hours so Olivia could have time to rest or catch up on legal journals. Eleanor was a fixture at both homes, equally comfortable in the modern penthouse and the warm brownstone. One evening, as they enjoyed a rare quiet dinner together, Eleanor finally asleep after a fussy day, Alexander reached across the table to take Olivia's hand. His expression was unusually serious. "I've been thinking about our future," he began. "About what I want for us." Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. "And what is that?" Alexander held her gaze steadily. "I want us to be a real family, Olivia. I want to marry you." The words hung in the air between them. It wasn't entirely unexpected, they'd been living as a family for months now, but something about the timing caught Olivia off guard. "Is this because of Eleanor?" she asked, needing to know. "Eleanor is part of it," Alexander admitted honestly. "But not the way you think. Having her has shown me what truly matters in life. And what matters to me is you, both of you." Olivia hesitated, conflicting emotions swirling inside her. "Alexander, I love you. You know I do. But marriage is a big step, especially with everything else we're adjusting to." Disappointment flickered across his face before he masked it. "I understand. It was just a thought." But it wasn't just a thought, and they both knew it. In the days that followed, a subtle tension lingered between them. Olivia found herself wondering if she'd made a mistake. She loved Alexander, deeply, completely. So why had her instinct been to hesitate? The answer came to her during a conversation with her mother, who had come to stay for a week to help with Eleanor. "He asked me to marry him," Olivia confessed as they sat together in the nursery, Eleanor sleeping peacefully in her grandmother's arms. "And you said no?" Eleanor Westbrook asked, eyebrows raised. "I said I needed time," Olivia clarified. "But I think he took it as a rejection." Her mother studied her face carefully. "Are you afraid he's only asking because of the baby?" "Maybe partly," Olivia admitted. "But it's more than that. I've always been so independent, Mom. My whole identity has been built around not needing anyone." "There's a difference between needing someone and choosing them," her mother said wisely. "Your father needed me, financially, emotionally, practically. It was a burden I carried until he left. But Alexander doesn't need you that way, does he?" Olivia shook her head slowly. "No. He's completely self-sufficient. And yet he chooses you," her mother continued. "Just as you choose him. That's not dependency, Olivia. That's partnership." The distinction resonated deeply. All this time, Olivia had been equating love with the kind of need that had drained her mother, but what she and Alexander shared was something entirely different. Later that week, Alexander returned from work to find Olivia in the living room, dressed for an evening out, Eleanor nowhere in sight. "Where's the baby?" he asked, momentarily confused. With my mother, Olivia replied. I thought we could use an evening to ourselves. His expression softened. I'd like that. She took him to the rooftop restaurant where they'd had their first official date, months after they'd already begun their unconventional journey together. As they waited for dessert, Olivia reached across the table to take his hand. I've been thinking about your proposal, she began. Alexander tensed slightly. Olivia, you don't have to. Let me finish, she said gently. I've been thinking about it, and I realized something. I don't want to marry you because of Eleanor. His face fell, but she squeezed his hand, continuing quickly. I want to marry you because of you. Because you've shown me that love doesn't have to mean losing myself. Because you're the first person who's ever truly seen me, all of me, and loved what you saw. Alexander stared at her, hardly daring to believe what she was saying. So, Olivia continued, reaching into her purse and pulling out a small velvet box. Alexander Russo, will you marry me? She opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band. Alexander's eyes widened in surprise before a slow smile spread across his face. Are you sure? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. I've never been more sure of anything, she replied. But I have one condition. Anything. We build our marriage like we've built our relationship, as equals. Partners in everything. Alexander took the ring from the box, his eyes never leaving hers. Nothing would make me happier. Olivia and Alexander's journey reminds us that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the most unexpected circumstances. True strength isn't about facing life alone, but about having the courage to let someone walk beside you. What did you think of Olivia and Alexander's story? Could you relate to Olivia's fears about losing her independence? Or perhaps to Alexander's desire to create the family he never had? Leave a comment starting with Dear Love Diaries, and let me know your thoughts. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and join our Dear Love Diaries family. Give this video a thumbs up so others can find it too. Don't forget to tap that notification bell to catch other romance stories that defy all odds.